Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to FoundFlix. I've got 5 on it. Pretty good, right? Sorry, no more singing. In case you forgot the creepy remix of that classic hip-hop tune featured in the trailer that I've had in my head for months, on this Ending Explained, we'll be looking at the second film from Jordan Peele, who stormed onto the scene with Get Out, and has returned with Us, following a vacationing family whose serenity is turned to chaos when they encounter malevolent doppelganger versions of themselves. But who knows what they want or where they came from. Now, when it comes to following up on a huge debut, winning an Oscar for Best Screenplay and everything, the anticipation becomes much higher for the follow-up, putting more pressure on the filmmaker to deliver because of their previous success. Due to this, Us is in an unenviably difficult position to deliver the goods, and it does succeed in many aspects. The movie is exceptionally well crafted and well directed, with many tension-filled cat and mouse showdowns and memorably creepy moments. And the core family cast, led by Lupita Nyong'o, are all individually brilliant, playing 2 drastically different versions of themselves, oftentimes even sharing the screen against their own doubles. Though it's Lupita's own double, Red, with her wide eyes and weird croaky intonations, that steals the show. So all of that works without a hitch, and the bigger messages of the film are worthy ones, with much of the double concept being tied to how we view others as potential threats or enemies. But perhaps we should take a look at ourselves first, and wonder if we are truly the villains. Where things started to fall apart for me is as more layers to the story unfold and twists are revealed, there are a staggering amount of undeveloped and dangling plot holes left in the end. In contrast with Get Out, that was concise and tight in its plotting, Us goes for a much more abstract direction. So it's really that these questions or potential plot holes are less important than the bigger picture, which obviously makes things a bit more difficult for me to try to explain. However, I will do what I can to answer the many questions raised in the movie, and at least give a satisfying answer regarding the real meaning of the story. So let's check out Us, breaking down the movie, just who these doppelgangers are, as well as explaining the big twist and the ending. Everything begins on a fateful summer trip with a young Adelaide and her family to Santa Cruz in 1986. Our very first shot establishing something that will have a surprising importance later. The young girl watching a commercial on TV for Hands Across America. You kids might not know what this is, but was a protest at the time to bring light to homelessness and other disadvantaged people by joining together across the US to hold hands to spread their message. A nice intention, but ended up proving a disappointment, only netting 16 million of the 50 they were aiming for, and emerging as a joke of sorts in later years due to its over-the-top nature and lack of success. Later, with their parents at the Santa Cruz boardwalk, made famous initially in the powerful 80s vampire flick The Lost Boys, Adelaide wanders off from her family down the beach and to a so-called shaman vision quest, an Indian mascot beckoning her to step inside the attraction to see her true self. Walking through a hall of mirror, she begins to whistle Itsy Bitsy Spider, all by herself and her many reflections, until stepping in front of another that's different, as in it's not a reflection but another person who looks exactly like Adelaide, causing her to scream in disbelief, cutting away before actually seeing what happens, but learning that she was missing for almost an hour before being found by her parents. And whatever happened has a dramatic impact on the young girl, diagnosed as having PTSD from her experience on the boardwalk and seemingly unable to talk. Years later, we pick up with a now adult Adelaide, who along with her family, husband Gabe, daughter Zora, and werewolf mask wearing son Jason are taking a summer vacation to that same area. You'd think Adelaide would be against the whole idea of returning to anywhere near Santa Cruz, but it's not until Gabe insists on going to the very same beach to meet some friends of theirs that she starts becoming concerned. At this point, she seems to have kind of blocked out what happened, and slowly sees more visions of her past in the Hall of Mirrors in '86, and strange coincidences start occurring after they arrive. On the way to the beach, seeing a dead man's body being wheeled out by an ambulance, realizing that it was actually the same person that had been on the boardwalk in her youth, bearing a sign that references the biblical verse Jeremiah 11:11, just as he did then. And we'll revisit that verse and its meaning towards the end. They try to brush off seeing a dead body, spending time with their kind of vacuous yuppie friends Kitty and Josh at the beach. Though, just like his mother decades earlier, Jason wanders off, finding himself at the same, now rebranded, attraction. He doesn't step inside, but does catch a glimpse of what appears to be the same homeless man wheeled out earlier, with blood running down his hand. But before anything happens, Adelaide shows up terrified about losing her son, and that he might suffer the same experience she did. It's clear that the past is flooding back to haunt her, later that night opening up to Gabe for the first time about the mirror girl, as she calls her, and clarifying that who she saw there looked exactly like her and wasn't a reflection but a separate doppelganger. Since then, she has been living in fear of the girl's return to potentially harm her, as soon after her worst nightmare nightmare becomes a reality. First spotting a spider, tying back to her childhood whistling of that tune, a mysterious quartet of strangers appear in their driveway, clad in matching red overalls, single leather glove, and shrouded in darkness. Gabe puts on a strong front, threatening them with a bat to get off of his property, but after one signals them, they separate and descend upon the house. Gabe returning inside, Adelaide has called the police, but they are a useless 14 minutes away, leaving them trapped inside with no help, chased around like playthings by the others. Rounding up the family in the living room, the others sit opposite them, revealing that they are duplicates of each of the family, or as Jason notes, they're us. Though not exactly, seemingly darker, more demented, and a bit simpler as well, with only the double of Adelaide called Red able to speak at all. The others only grunting and growling like primal animals. And it's her who explains who they are to the family, that they are shadow versions of them, living in the darkness while they live in the light. Each double is connected to the other, even Red marrying a double of Gabe called Abraham and having children just like Adelaide's, but of course more twisted and monstrous. It seems that this is their consistent experience, everything twisted into darkness in their world. Using as example, when Adelaide was given joyous presents, Red was only given presents like those golden scissors, always cutting herself on the sharp blades. As such, Red and her family are tethered to Adelaide's, and they have been lying in wait for her to return, for them to come to the surface and begin the process of de-tethering, as in killing their above-ground counterparts. Though they could easily take them out right now, Red instead decides to have a little fun to draw out their fear, sending her family to chase down the others. This ends up being a mistake, as the family are able to escape their grasp, Gabe taking out Abraham with his unreliable motorboat's engine, showing that they are mortal just like us and can be killed. The others escaping on the boat, heading towards Kitty and Josh's house, where we find out that the Wilson family isn't the only ones that have doubles, as the unsuspecting family are quickly dispatched by their own doppelgangers, just as the Wilsons arrive, having to fend off the murderous copies of their friend's family, including at one point a copy of Josh, called Tex for some reason, chasing after Gabe to his boat, following after and making what sounds like pterodactyl squawks while searching for him. Which was so absurd and enjoyable as a fan of Tim's comedy, though I think Jamie and I were the only ones laughing in the packed theater. They are able to kill the Tyler family doppelgangers, all starting to get a little too comfortable with this whole brutally murdering people thing. But considering that it's them or us and there can be only one, violence is an unfortunate necessity for them. After rounding up the family in Josh's fancy new car, they encounter Zora's doppelganger Umbre, climbing on the roof and stabbing through with her scissors, even hanging on when they try to shake her off, eventually successfully launching her off the car into a tree, doubling over her body into a pretzel amongst the branches and killing her. Attempting to leave town, they make it to the main drag the next morning, where they are blocked by Jordan's double, the pyromaniac Pluto, lighting a car on fire, though Jordan is able to outsmart Pluto, the boy mirroring his movements and walking right back into the flames of his own creation, quickly spreading over his body. This is odd, as Jordan and Pluto are the only ones seen to ever explicitly mirror each other's movements like this. It's perhaps due to his younger age that Jordan is able to control his copy in a way, as literally no one else experiences the same thing. With Pluto gone, there's only Red left, who manages to snatch the boy up, and Adelaide somehow knows exactly where to go, returning to the Vision Quest attraction, opening a secret door inside that leads to a staircase and goes deeper down into ornate tunnels and an underground facility, seeing rabbits hopping around aimlessly. There she finds Red waiting for her in a classroom, filling us in further on her plan with the detethering, and that it has been something that she's been planning for years, as well as who is behind the doppelgangers and their initial creation. Apparently, they are part of a government project, and they created these clones of literally every person in America for generations in an attempt to assuage control over their original versions. They were able to create the clones, but found that they couldn't recreate the soul, and thusly couldn't control their above-world counterparts. So when their efforts prove unsuccessful, they simply abandoned the project along with these clones down in these underground facilities. Assumedly, the many rabbits around are tied to initial cloning experiments, and as they quickly reproduce naturally, this is what the underground people have been feeding on to survive all these years. There's a lot to consider with this whole idea of a widespread cloning experiment, leading to many more questions. But beyond their main purpose, not much else is given to the specifics of who or what was behind this massive experiment and just how it works. Even just to look at one example, what happens when the original version leaves Santa Cruz? If they are tethered together, wouldn't the copy move to the same location and presumably another underground facility facility somewhere? Even Adelaide was not from or born in Santa Cruz, only visiting. So when she left, it seems the double would follow her, yet for some reason stays in Santa Cruz. Point being, everything kind of topples apart if you start looking at it too in depth. So we just kind of have to let this go and focus on the bigger picture. Moving on, the clones were left abandoned in the facility without a purpose, until a few years after '86. There was a very important specific moment that led to their revolution. As a child, Adelaide went into dance to deal with her trauma, and during a recital, Red down below mirrored her counterpart's movements, a kind of complexity that the others didn't know they were capable of as supposedly inferior doubles, even though she was running into the walls and stuff. And it was as a result of this, the others realized she was different than them, and this set in motion the beginning stages of their detethering revolution with Red as their leader, intending to recreate the Hands Across America with the doubles to bring attention to their plight on a global scale. But there's a surprising reason that Red is different from her underground counterparts. Going back to that night when the two encountered each other as children, when Adelaide saw her clone, they attacked her and took her to the facility below, chaining her down to a bed. And it was the copy who returned to the surface, replacing her original self, as in who we thought was Adelaide this whole time was actually her double, and the real Adelaide has been trapped underground this whole time, going on to becoming the leader of the detethering, seeking revenge on her double having taken over her life as a child. It's also presumably Red that designs their signature outfits, an odd reference to the Michael Jackson Thriller shirt her dad won her the night she was taken, the gold scissors being a representation of duality, just like the Tethered and their above-world equivalents. As Peele said, a whole made up of two parts, but they also lie in this territory between the mundane and the absolutely terrifying. Still don't know where they got them from though. And in their final battle, it's the double who emerges victorious, showing her true nature when stabbing her through, grunting and groaning like an animal, killing the real Adelaide and rejoining her family, resuming what has become her life, even if technically not hers. Leaving to somewhere in an ambulance, we see that the detethering was a resounding success, a sweeping vista of a mountain range dotted with red-suited followers all holding hands. The idea here being that the others are a stand-in for the marginalized or oppressed amongst us, people considered unimportant and abandoned by the government and society at large. Their Hands Across America bringing light to their plight in the world. These people are considered inferior due to being clones, but they are also still us, indeed our doubles, and whoever you are, all together, we as a whole make up the United States of today. It's also interesting as it's the clone of Adelaide who has no soul that is able to blend in with the rest of us, grow up, fall in love, and have children. So even if a clone, when she's given the chance to live amongst us, she thrived and was just as human as anyone else. Which brings us back to that Bible verse from Jeremiah, which further enhances the film's overall statement. Even the numbers, 11:11, providing a nice symmetry reflected in the doubles. Therefore thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will bring evil upon them, which they shall not be able to escape. And though they shall cry unto me, I will not hearken unto them. To understand the meaning, we must understand what the entire book of Jeremiah is about. He was a prophet and warned the Jews in exile in Babylon that God wasn't happy that they were worshiping false idols, warning it could lead to the fall of Jerusalem. The point being that God won't help these people as they are worshiping false idols, and if or once they learn the errors of their ways, they're on their own. So to put this in modern terms, things like technology or money are worshipped by many nowadays across the globe, seen most explicitly in the Tyler family, their daughters constantly on their phone and living a life of luxury in a big-ass house, and don't forget Josh's new car that even Gabe was jealous of, who are quick to be murdered by their doubles. And even hilariously, when Kitty is being killed, she calls out for help, not to God, but the police, which triggers her Alexa to play Fuck the Police by NWA. Her technology can't save her in the end, and she will be punished for worshiping their own false idols. All of this we've discussed seems to come together to make up the grand statement Peele is going for, and that's commendable, but I do wish he had paid more attention to the details of the story and making its intricacies all come together in a coherent way, because so much of it is left without any consideration, focusing instead on what the grander statement is and leaving many smaller pieces to fall by the wayside. There's a lot right off the bat that I was left wondering. Details like who made their outfits and gave them those snazzy gold scissors, or why were the clones suddenly able to come to the surface after all this time. There's a ton of these kinds of logistical questions left behind, and I guess the point is that this stuff isn't really the focus of Peele's intent here. It's more about the consideration reiteration of how we always fear others, those we don't understand. But perhaps it's us that we should be taking a hard look at, as through our own fear, we have become our own worst enemies. So the specifics of just how the government cloned hundreds of millions of people in abandoned subway tunnels is more like window dressing, background to his real point. But I still wish we had more to work with in that regard. Perhaps it's being saved for potential sequels set in the same universe to explore these many questions in more depth. This brings us to the conclusion of this ending explained on Us. There are still many aspects to the movie to explore, including a number of horror movie homages throughout, and maybe when it's out on video, I'll do more on the movie. Admittedly, I like Get Out more for being tighter and more concise in its story, but there is still much to like about Us, and does prove that Jordan Peele is only beginning a long and harrowed career as a new master of horror, and the certain financial success of this will lead to more from his particular vision, and I will always be interested to see what Peele will have to say next. What did you guys think of Us and its ending? Do you have any other questions about the movie that I missed? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Thanks for watching FoundFlix. See you next time.